Hi, this presentation will explain the basic of how I build my REST API
Using web technologies such as Node.js, Express, and MongoDB. This project is submitted to LUT University in part fulfillment for the requirement of the virtual course in software development skills with a focus on back-end development. Please do check the public repository source code of this project for in-depth details. I'm Arnel, and let's get started. First and foremost, to build this project, I have to install Node.js on my local machine, and it's done by installing NVM, a Node Package Manager. NVM stands for Node.js Version Manager. The NVM command is a POSIX-compliant bash script that make it easier to manage multiple versions of Node.js on a single environment. To use it, I need to install the bash script and add it into the shell path. To ease into the development of the project, Express Generator was used as a starting boilerplate. This will install some of the useful modules and to create the bare structure of the Express application. For database, I use the MongoDB Atlas and create a free tier cluster or the free starter cluster M0 that comes with 512 MB storage, a shared RAM, and a vCPU. Then I whitelist the IP address enabling all IP address anywhere, which is 0.0.0.0/0. This simplifies the network connection, but I'm fully aware that this method is less secure. The API that I have developed was deployed in Heroku, and basically it has three primary functionality with regards to the collection that was planned to develop. First, the user collection or the user endpoint where the creation of user takes place. In this endpoint, after the user has authenticated with credential, can update their username, email, and password, and can only delete the user account only by the user who created the object. Next is the items collection where the user needs to log in before they can manage to create the items. Can only update and delete items made by the user who owns the document. Here the foreign key is the user ID and the required properties that the user needs to fill in this endpoint are name, description, and price, and it has a automatically generated slug field based on the name of the item. Next is the images or the image collection or the image object of a singular item. In this endpoint, user must be authenticated and can add images or image document only if the authenticated user owns the item. So here the foreign keys are item ID and user ID. So going back to the user object, once the user delete his or her own user object or user account, as they say, all of the associated object and document made by the user was also deleted. Yarn was used uh, as a package manager for installing the dependencies for the project, and aside from Express, some of the dependencies and packages that are currently installed and used for the project was JSON Web Token for securing the transfer of information over the web by implementing JWT or JWT, .env for configuring the environment variables, Mongoose and Mongoose timestamp for schema and model related solution, and for creating the created at and updated at field automatically, bgrep for hashing password, joy for validating user input and sanitizing user input by using sanitize, Multer for parsing form data body and for uploading files, Helmet for adding security layer to the Express application, for enabling cross-origin resource sharing, I use scores, Slugify and random string for the slug field, and node nodemon for as dep dependencies. Next, I will going to test the API that I created from Heroku by using Postman. I'm going to test the REST API that I created from Heroku by using Postman, and the first endpoint that I'm going to test is the user's endpoint, where I'm going to create a user, update some of the credentials of user, and delete some user, and also list all of the registered user from the database, provided that the authenticated user has a permission. So going to register a user, it is a post request from slash API slash users slash register. It is a JSON body, so it's raw JSON. Okay. The required properties are username, email, password, and confirmation password, where the username and email must be unique from the database because it is validated from the username is validated from schema level, and the email is validated from the code, and password and confirmation password must be matched. Going to test if the password and confirmation password are is not match, or it is not similar to each other. Like for example, it is password 1, the confirmation password. It will give some error messages. Confirmation password must be reference to the password. And before this, I'm going to try or test the uniqueness of username, because I have one username from the database, which is username 1, and the error is this, which it says that the username is a duplicate from the database, so I cannot um, enter this data. For the email, let's try the test one at example.io, and the error message email is already in use, and the HTTP status code is 422 unprocessable entity. Let's try to create a username to test2 at example.io, password to password to. Okay, I'm going to send this. I'm going to register this user, and the response is HTTP status 201 created. The user ID, which is default from Mongoose, the username, email, password is hashed. It's already hashed. Updated at and created at field is auto-generated by Mongo's timestamp. And I'm going to verify it from MongoDB Atlas if the user that I created um, is already recorded in the database. Let's refresh the user's collection. So here, the username to and test2 at example.io is in the database. I'm going to create another one. Username 3, test3 at example.io, password 3, password 3. And the response is same as before. So here, username 3, test3 at example.io. Next, I'm going to log in those user, post request again, but this time going to log in API/API/user/login JSON body raw JSON. Required properties are email and password. Oh. And the response are token. This is being spit out by JSON Web Token because I use the package, the user ID, which is part of the code that I want to customize and include to the response, the message, the authentication successful authentication message, and the status 200, which is okay. This long random string is used for um, authenticating certain kind of protected routes, and this this authorization code or token must be um, must must um, must be recorded in the authorization header if the route from the API is protected. I'm going to try to log in the test tree at example.io and password 3 if it works, and same. Okay, to update uh, to update certain credential, I'm going to test first the email and how to update the email of the user. It is patch request, and the URL is email, and the ID of the user. Let's try to update the test tree at example.io or the username 3. I'm going to get the ID and put it here on the last, and the header or the authorization header with the key of authorization bearer. I'm going to copy and paste the token, JSON web token, and also updating it with JSON. So this is the updated um, email for username 3. Going to verify it from the database. So username 3 and the email is already updated to test31example.io. I'm going to revert it back to test3 at example.io. It's very easier to memorize those patterns. Okay, emails. Okay, revert it back. Then to update the username of the user, it is a patch request user, and the email of the user that I'm going to update their the username. So for example, username 2, and it is a protected route. Going to header, authorization bearer. I'm going to log in first, the username 2, to get the token. So this is the token. I'm going to copy and paste it. For username 2, let's say it going to change it to username 21. So here the response and the username is already updated. Yes. I'm going to revert it back again to username 2 because it is very I'm used to the pattern, and I want to follow that pattern. Username 21 to username 2 again. Patch request, update username. Yeah, here. So I already update email and username, then update password. Yes. Patch request. And the endpoint is /API/user password slash the ID. For example, the username 2 or the test2 at example that I am going to update the his or her password, something like that. Okay, I'm going to refresh again, copy this token, authorization for the key value, better, and the token value. Let's see. And the ID for the username 2. And it is a JSON body again, raw JSON password. Password 21, and also the confirmation password. That's I'm going to test if I'm not if I forgot to uh, if I forgot to input a field which is confirmation password, if the API or the endpoint will work. Like for example, password only. I'm going to make patch request to update the password. I'm going to try. So there's a error message which says that the confirmation password is required and the status code is 422 unprocessable entity. So I need to add the confirmation password because it is part of validation. Okay, hit send. So the password is already updated and it is hashed and it's updated. I'm going to try to log in the username 2 or the test2 at example that io using this updated password if it's work. Test2 at example that io password 21. Let's try. So authentication is successful. I'm going to revert back again to password 2 because I'm used to it. I'm used to the pattern. Okay. So I'm already updated the credentials, the email, password, and the username. And I'm trying to delete a user. For example, username 3. But first, I'm going to log in the username 3, test 3, and password 3. Copy this token. So delete is a delete request. Mhm. Sorry. And I also need the ID. Users delete and the ID. And I have the ID and the correct URL. Send. Hmm. Forgot the authorization header. Okay. And the HTTP status code is 204 node content. I'm going to test from the database if the test3 at example.io is being removed or deleted. Going to refresh the collection. And yes, test the username 2, test 3, username 3, sorry for that, username 3 and test3 at example.io is already removed from the database. Next, I'm going to list the available user from the database with permission, and it is a get request. But the username 1 or test 1 at example.io is is the user who has a permission to view this. So I'm going to log first the test 1 at example.io and password 1. Okay, copy this token. request. So the endpoint is only the base URI of the user's endpoint. So the response are users, and it will list the two user that is in the database, username 1 and the username 2. I'm going to add again the username 3, for example. Okay. And I'm going to make a get request again. So here the username 1, username 2, and username 3 are being listed. But if I'm going to change the authorization, like for example, username 2 will go into this endpoint, and I'm going to check if username 2 has a permission to view the route. Login first, get the JSON web token or the token, authorization token, and change the token better, and make a get request. So it spit out some uh, status code, HTTP status code 403 forbidden, and it is a restricted route. I'm going to test the items endpoint, and from this endpoint, a user can um, create an item, update an item, and delete an item. But this is protected route, and a user, of course, needs to be logged in into the API, and the item can only be updated and deleted by the user, by the registered user who created the item object itself. Currently, I have zero or um, I empty objects on my items collection, and I'm going to populate it with data. So first, I'm going to um, log in a user. I'm going to use the username 3 or the test3 at example.io. I'm going to get the token. And the token is here. I'm going to use it for authentication using JSON Web Token. And this is the um, routes, which is /API/items for creation of item, which is create, and its post request, JSON body, required properties are name, description, and price, and the price is number data type, and both description and name are string data type. to check my cheat sheet here. For name, all of the properties are required. For example, I forgot to enter the description and price, and I'm going to create an item for the authorization header. Incomplete properties, and the message is description is required, so I'm going to enter a description. Going to create, um, but I'm attempting to um, forget, for example, the price properties, and says that the price is required. Going to enter the price, but some form of mistake, like for example, I'm going to enter a string, and the price must be a number, so it should be a number or integer or float, double data type can be added. And the response, um, 201 for HTTP status code created, and I have ID, the name, which is Thermo Fisher Savant Speed Evaporator, the description, the price, and the slug, which is based from the name of the item with a random string, the created by ID, created by email, which is added automatically based on the current user who added the item, and the updated at and created at, which is from Mongoose timestamp. I'm going to add more for this username. For this username 3, this one, for name, description, and price. And I created same response as before. For user, I'm going to use the username to or test2 at example.io to create an item for the user. Change the header token or the bearer token. Price. This is for username 2. Okay. I have created for username 2 and 3 user, and I'm going to check the database items collection. It is now populated with some object. The term of Fisher Savant uh, created by test3 at example.io, as well as Temescal fast cycle evaporation system by username 3 and username 2 or test2 at example.io created a Nordgren Excelon filter regulator. Okay, next endpoint, get request without authentication to list all of the items from the database. So it's AP slash API slash items get requests, and I got the 3 objects created by different user, and also another get request which is authenticated. For example, I'm going to authenticate username 3 user. Okay, get request, and only the objects that the username 3 created is being listed together with the um, price create. Oh, sorry, I forgot the other. By email test 3. So here the 2 objects that username 3 created, Thermo Fisher Savant, and Temescal Fast Cycle. The difference between these two GET requests is that the authenticated one, um, the created by ID and created by email is part of the response, while on the unauthenticated route, it is not displayed. Only the ID, name, description, price, log, updated at and created at. So here, it's like a complete, um, it's like a list of response with the with respective to the properties. Okay, next I'm going to make update for the name, description, and price. I'm going to start with name. It's a patch request. Name. And the key or the parameter for this is the slug. Where is the slug? For Thermo Fisher Savant Speedback Evaporator, I'm going to change or modify the name. So the slug here, I'm going to copy it and put it here as a parameter. Then I'm going to log in first, test3, and refresh the token, get the token. Authorization better. So before that, like for example, um, I'm going to test if the certain user who is not the creator of the item object can update the name property. So I'm going to change again to, like for example, test user 2. The Thermo Fisher Savant is made by username 3, if I'm not mistaken, for a while. Yes. Going to get the token and paste it here. For the body, it is JSON. So name, some other machine name, for example. And I'm going to make a batch request for this, and let's see what will happen. So the error message is user not allowed to modify the document with 403 status code forbidden. So I'm going to, because username 2 is not the creator of it, the username 3, user is the creator of that object. So he can modify then all of the properties, and not all, but all the required properties, which is name, description, and price. now the name is being updated. I'm going to check the database again. Originally, the name is Thermo Fisher Savant speed vacuum operator made by test3 at example.io, and I'm going to refresh the items collection to see the change. And here the DNA dash 120 dash 115 is being recorded, so it's being updated. Next is the description. So instead of name, I'm going to put here description. The slug, I'm going to here. I'm going to copy the updated slug for Thermo Fisher Savant. Because also the slug is whenever the name is updated, the same with the slug, because it is the representation of the name of the item object. Okay. Let's see if this route, the description, for example, the test one at example.io or username one user can update the description route for items. Some description, for example. Let's see. Test user 1 is being logged in, but the creator is test user 3. Username 3. So again, user not allowed to modify the document. The same with price properties. So I'm going to change the description for Thermo Fisher. Test3 at example.io 3 password 3. Okay, it's sent. And the response, the description is already updated. I'm going to check the database. And hmm. and here the updated description is already recorded. Okay, easy to use small capacity system are the ideal choice for concentrating or drying DNA and RNA samples. Okay, next, the price. Currently, the price is for this object 8,900 and 379. I'm going to downgrade the price to, let's say, 5,000. So the price is updated, and refresh the database MongoDB Atlas to see the update. Thermo Fisher Savant, and the price is 5,000. Okay, and for the delete request, only the creator or the one who the username user who create the object can only delete the item object. So delete request, delete, and the parameter is item, the ID of the item. Let's try test user 1 again. If the user can delete this object, value bearer. So delete, and the parameter is ID. Let's see the ID of Thermo Fisher Savant Speedvac is this one. Okay, let's try. So there is an error message, current user has no permission to perform delete action. because this is made by username 3 or test3 at example.io user 3. So I'm going to log the test3, the test3 at example.io, the one who creates the item object, which is the Thermo Fisher Savant. Okay, let's see. So HTTP status to 04 no content. Let's see if the Thermo Fisher Savant is being deleted. So as of now, it's here in the collection, but if I'm going to refresh, the object Thermo Fisher Savant is deleted. Here, only two: Temescal Fast and Nordgren Excelcon filter regulator made by test2 at example.io. I'm going to try to delete that, but first authenticate test2 at example.io. Going to get the ID of Temescal Fast. No. The Nordgren Excelcon filter regulator made by username username 2. Yes, it is. Going to get the ID. This is the item ID. Replace and make a delete request. So 204 HTTP status code, no content. Refresh the items collection page. Now only one object is in the record, which is Temescal Fast Cycle Evaporation System by test3 at example.io user. I'm going to test now the images endpoint where a user can create an image, delete an image. It depends if the user is the one who register on the API currently is the creator of the object, and also based on the I, uh, item ID, because as I mentioned before that the images collection it has a relationship with user and item. So the foreign key is user ID and item ID. So to create the no, the database is still empty for images collection, as you can see. And to create an images or an image, uh, the endpoint is slash API slash images create. So I'm going to make a post request again. The parameter, which is the item ID. For example, I'm going to use the object name Temescal Fast Cycle Evaporation System, and it's created by, I'm going to check the database items, and it's created by test3 at example.io user, or the username 3 user. So I'm going to add some image onto this item object and onto this user. First, log in. I'm going to log in the test3 at example.io user. For a while. Okay. And the route for creating the image is slash API slash images slash create. Header authorization. Better. I'm going to get the ID of the Temescal Fast Cycle Evaporation System. To paste the item ID as the parameter, and I'm going to make a post request, and it's a form data body, and with this endpoint I use Multer for uploading files and for parsing the form data body, and Multer is also used for parsing multi-part body. So form data, the only required properties here is item img, item ing value, which is text file, so it is a file. I'm going to add some image because this is a evaporation system. Okay, I'm going to select the evaporation system here. I'm going to upload. Okay, send. So the response has a HTTP status code 201 created, the ID of course, item ID, which is a URL of the and the file name. For item ID, that is the ID of the item that, or the parameter that a user um, put on the URI as a URI parameter created by ID. Of course, the ID or the user ID of the current user, and created by email, the email of the current user, and created at updated at by Mongo's timestamp. So I'm going to add more. Um, but first, I'm going to create an item. Post requests, header. And for username 3 again. My cheat sheet here. Okay. So the new item, the username 3 is want to create is Comber filter dryer to make post request to create. Oh, sorry, the URL is not right. Okay, so it's created now. Items, refreshed items collection. So the Comber filter dryer is recorded. I'm going to add more. Um, so here, for the name, description, price, and then create. Forget to close. the JSON body. Okay, one more. Here. Okay. So there are the temescal fast cycle evaporation system was already an image. So I created 3 objects for test user 3, test 3 at example.io, or the username 3, which is Comber filter, thermoserval, RCX, RC6 plus, super speed centrifuge, thermo Fisher Savant speed vac evaporator, DNA 120. So I'm going to add an image on this following objects created. I'm going here, images. I'm going to log in again. Going to create an image for what object? First, the Comber filter dryer. I'm going to get because it is made by um, test user test 3 at example.io user. Body item img. So Comber filter, Okay, hit send, and the response 201 created ID item ing for item ID for this item 608D, so on and so forth. Created by ID, created by email by test3 at example.io. To so this item ID, I'm going to copy and paste it and see the the files uploaded on the application. Going to Heroku. Okay, going to paste the URL. So this is the image, the Comber dryer filter. Okay, and for thermoserval RC6 plus superspeed centrifuge, I'm going to add also an image on this object. It is a centrifuge here. So item img, the only properties required. Okay, I'm going to see the uploaded file. For the centrifuge, so this is the file uploaded. Going to test also, or to check the collections, images collection, sorry. So there is an image for the three objects. That is the evaporation system, the Comber dryer, and the centrifuge. Okay, and it's all created by test3 at example.io. What else? Thermo Fisher Savant Speed Vac Evaporator. I'm going to create an image for this. body, form data body, file, speedback.png, hit send. Hmm, what what went wrong? Okay, I'm going to check again. So this is the speedback Thermo Fisher Savant. Okay, successfully uploaded. Next, get requests for all of the items. The authenticated route first. Okay. Get requests. These are the items that username 3 created. So therefore, for for test user 1 or username 1, let's see, it should be empty because I haven't made any objects using username 1. Oh no, sorry. By email. I'm so sorry, there is some typographical or some mistake on my part. So slash API slash images by the email of the to whatever user. For now, I'm going to test the test3 at example.io get requests, authentication, header. So those are the three images or three objects that is being uploaded, or four, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So all made by test3 at example.io. For test1 or username1, let's see. One for the email, test1 so it's empty for test1 at example.io user. So for an no authentication get requests, images get requests, okay, I typographical error. So there are four objects only made by test user test 3 at example.io or username 3. Okay, and the um to delete the images, only the creator of the image can delete the image object. So I'm going to delete requests. The parameter is ID of the image. Like for example, I'm going to delete an object, images. Going to delete the Comber filter dryer, and this is the ID. Okay, images, delete. I'm going to test if username 1 can delete this object, an image object, even though the user is not the creator of the item object. So the error message, current user not authorized. So it's, and the status code is 403 forbidden. And for the right one, test 3 at example.io. The Comber dryer. This one, the Comber filter dryer. I'm going to delete it. Authenticated by the user test 3 at example.io. So the message, image deleted, 200, okay, as the status code. I'm going to check from the database if it's deleted. So this is the Comber dryer. This one. Going to refresh the page. So there is no Comber dryer anymore. Okay. If an item from the items model is deleted, all of the associated object, like for example associated image object that belongs to the item, is also deleted. So let's see, I'm going to trace which one is for which. Evaporation system. for example, if I'm going to delete the Temescal fast cycle evaporation system object, the image object is also deleted. So this one, going to delete this image. So I'm going to get first the ID of the image. No, the going to perform a delete. The ID of the item Temescal fast cycle evaporation system. And the parameter is the ID. Header, authorization, bearer. Let's see if test user test one at example that I can delete this object, but I already tried it on the last video. Okay, test user one or username one will go into delete it. If I'm going to delete an object, an item object, the associated image object is also deleted, provided that the registered user is the one who create the object in respective to items. So first, I'm going to delete an object and it's in the API slash item slash delete with the image or no, with the item ID as a parameter. I'm going to um, I'm going to delete the Comber filter dryer 2.5 squared meter item object. I think it has an image also associated with the item object because it says here for item ID. I'm going to delete this and let's see if um, the image associated with that item is can can be deleted. Let's start by um, by by testing the user who is not the one who created that item. Like for example, test for test one at example.io or the username one. I'm going to check if the validation works. This is test one at example.io. And this is the object that I'm going to delete, the Comber filter dryer 2.5. ID as the parameter for this, but the authenticated user is test1 at example.io. There's an error that the current user has no permission to perform delete action, so the validation works. If it's test3 now, test3 is the right user. Comber filter dryer again. Delete. Wait. It's still here. Let's try again. So 204, no content. I'm going to check the database if the compare filter, the compare dryer is removed. So the compare dryer is no longer in the image, in the items collection. How about the compare media? So it's not together with the related image object. So once I deleted, once the user deleted the item that he or she owns, and also if that item has a associated image object, that object is also will be removed if the item object is gonna be deleted. Okay. If a user is the one who deleted, if the user object will be deleted, all of the associated item object as well as associated image object will be deleted. So both those three collection will be deleted on the database. I'm going to try the test 3 at example.io because it has many, the user has many collection for both images and items. Those two objects for items and images is created by username 3. To delete a user, the ID of the user as a parameter, delete. I'm going to log in first. I'm going to log as test1 at example.io to test if the validation works. I'm going to get the ID of username 3. Okay, this is the ID of username 3, but the authenticated user is username 1. I'm going to delete the username in hope that the user and the related objects on the of the user, then the foreign keys will be removed from the database. There is an error message, no permission to delete account and related objects. So validation is okay. Going back to test 3 at example.io, or the username 3, password 3. I'm going to get the right token to delete the user. Mhm. For items, everything is made by every object here is made by test3 at example.io. Okay, so I'm going to delete the Comber dryer filter. Oh, no, no, no. Going to delete the username 3. But first I have to log in as username 3, or test3 at example.io. Okay, delete. Status 204, again, it means it's deleted. Confirm in the database first for the user. So test3 at example.io is removed. How about for the items made by test3 at example.io? So it's empty now. For the images, it's empty. So I completed the CRUD operation for the API, for the REST API made with Express, MongoDB, and Node.js. So if a user deletes his account, all of the related um, objects created from the user object will be deleted. For example, the items and the images. If the images and if the item object will be removed by a registered user who created that item, the related uh, images object or image will be removed. So that's it.